Greetings, Ndubuisi, Ekekwe. It's quite a great privilege and honor to have this opportunity of speaking before you all at this moment. I want to thank the organizers of the program for inviting me to participate in this amazing program. So I will be speaking on managing Nigeria's inflation for long-term competitiveness. I'm connecting from the United States today. So we know that over the last few years that inflation has actually gotten out of hand. Across the world, not just in Nigeria, it has become a very, very challenging thing. In the United States, just like every other part of the world, you're seeing the impact of inflation. But specifically, the question here is, how are you going to tame this inflation? How are you going to manage it so that in as much as you want to drive growth and provide opportunities for young people and the citizens, as well as drive the efficiency on the utilization of factors of production, you do not take the country into recession. So as doing that, we have to now look at things that we can do. And the first thing I would like to postulate here is that Nigeria may also need to look at our always increasing the interest rate. That is the American strategy. Whenever they are fighting the inflation in the country, they like to raise the rates from the Federal Reserve. And of course, our country, Nigeria, follows along, and we also like to raise. But there is also something I want to point out here, that unlike in the United States, where the consumer lending is very, very, very good because of a credit-based economy, if you raise the interest rate, credit cards go up, and if credit cards go up, you are trying to actually reduce the consumption. And if you do that, you're actually trying to rebalance the equilibrium points, because not many people will have money to buy things because they can't just get easy loans. But our consumer lending in Nigeria is really very, very insignificant. And what that means is that all these rates that we are increasing, they're actually largely affecting the corporations and companies that are actually expected to actually produce these goods, products, and services. And it's only when that they can produce these products, that is the time that we can have supply. And with more supply, we mean we can now begin to move the equilibrium point to the price point where technically things will be better off and inflation could be solved. So we need to think about it. And of course, we can argue that if we do not increase interest rates, that we're going to run into difficulties. But I do believe that the aggressive nature that the Central Bank of Nigeria has done that has actually contributed to that inflationary pressure, because they're actually suppressing not demand, but actually supply. And if you are suppressing supply, you are not really going to help to manage that inflation. The second point is, how do we fix the forest paralysis? Because the FS issue is a very huge problem, and that is contributing to the inflationary pressure in our economy. I propose that Nigerian government can reach out to the diaspora and say, hey, we're going to pay you 8% interest rates, and can get African Development Bank and Afrexim Bank to back that. And then you give these two banking institutions future security on crude oil. And then when the time comes to repay back the investment from the diaspora, you pay into their DOM accounts, which will be opened automatically during the point of this investment, so that that money at least remains in Nigeria, even though they can repatriate it. And if you can have that supply of US dollars in the Nigerian banks, it can deepen our capacity to defend Nigerian naira, the global arena. So 2022, the diaspora contributed $20 billion to remittance. And if you look at all the channels, including internal swaps, we're looking at up to $40 billion across all channels. So working with them to inject $10 billion, I don't think it's a very, very difficult thing. And also we have to look at our crude oil production. Roughly, we need to get it to the point where it can reach up to 2 million barrels per day from, I think, currently about 1.2 million barrels per day. And if we get that fund, that extra production of crude oil will have to take care of the interest. 6.8 billion goes into the forward payments, which remains one of the difficult challenges that we have in the country, because until we can pay that 6.8 billion, our naira may not have space to breathe. And then you take 1 billion to digitize the oil and gas sector, another billion to actually drive community-centered electricity projects where citizens across communities are actually going to be empowered to provide the electricity. Since it's evident that at the national level, we've not been able to do this thing and constantly. The national grid keeps falling. So we can't just think that we have the ability to actually do centralized electricity transmission and generation. So 1 billion now goes into looking at our refineries. I believe that if we announce a program like this, the triple impacts is going to be a virtuous cycle. They can actually help us to get the naira back to within the range of 500 naira per dollar over the next 6 months. So, and then Nigeria also has to build platforms. And, there is this whole news that we can't subsidize anything. But if you look at the world economy, you just realize that companies are subsidized at the production level by governments. The United States, China, Russia, India, they are all great subsidizing entities, nations on fuel. Nigeria doesn't even register because we are not even doing a lot of subsidy. But what I want to say here that we need to subsidize production and not consumption. And then if we take out the corruption in fuel subsidy, we are going to be fine. It's key to note that driving competitiveness in the 21st century comes through building platforms for commerce and unlocking latent opportunities in markets. If you go to the United States Postal Service, their Postal Service has never made profit in the last 22 years. So the US government is happy to lose money year in and year out, provided the Postal Service makes it possible for rural America and the urban America to remain entwined and connected so that transaction and business can go together. But in Nigeria, we think that our Postal Service cannot operate until it can make money. And that is the reason why we are not building platforms for commerce, because it's only when you build platform for commerce upon which young people can now build companies that by building those companies, they provide job opportunities for the citizens. So we need to think about how we do that. And doing that will now move us from an inventive economic system into, I call it, innovation economy. Inventive economy system basically means a society where there are so many ideas, but there are no products and services. Nigeria has to figure out a process to leave this area where we are still tethered and begin to do what China and United States did. And how did they do that? They moved from invention to innovation. And that means they built platforms for commerce. If the Nine Post in Nigeria is operating and losing, let's say, $100 million every year, the economic activity that Nine Post will power in Nigeria can make it possible that Nigeria can generate a total tax revenue of more than 100 million. So why can't you do it? That is what the United States does. And as we do that, the opportunities of the future are evolving. We are moving from the era of innovation to the era of accelerated society era. That is the age of AI, autonomous systems, and the centralized economy. And what that means that the future is going to be super awesome, but we need to prepare young people to participate in that entrepreneurial capitalism which is happening at that time. If you look here, we are not even gotten into this era of innovation, but the world is moving into another age. We are still here, but the world has moved. We've not been able to develop catalytic programs and platforms that can actually make it possible to rise. So mechanization, mass production, automation, data systems. Across agriculture, logistics, supply chain, medical, we have a lot of work to do. It's only when we can do that, that is the time the employment opportunities will come. The inflationary pressure that we have in our economy, I just believe vividly, if we can inject innovation into economy, we are going to be very, very fine. Thank you so much for the opportunity of speaking before you all, and I want to wish you a very great program today. Thank you, and thank you.